featuring Olusegun
Welcome
Aganga,
to our
the
book chat
author
featuring
of Reclaiming
Olusegun
the Jewel
Aganga,
of
the
Africa,
author
and our
of
host,
Reclaiming the
Joseph
Jewel
Ike.
of Africa,
Please give
and
them
our
a
host,
special
Joseph
Ake welcome.
Ike. Please give them a special Ake welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome to my discussion with the author of Reclaiming the Jewel of Africa, a blueprint for taking Nigeria and Africa from potential to posterity, Mr. Olusegun Aganga. Please give him a round of applause. We were told not to read through the profiles of our guests for those of us having book chats. And I'm glad for that because we'd probably spend all of our time going through his profile. He is a former Minister of Finance, also the inaugural Minister of the Ministry of Innovation, Technology and Investment, MITI. He's been the chairman of every major board you can imagine that has to do with big money, big investment, big innovation, and all of those things. One reviewer said, this book diagnoses or takes a diagnostic look at the issues with Nigeria. And because of Nigeria's place in Africa, again, not from a place of being proud, but Nigeria is kind of the America of Africa. And not from a proud place. It's just what it is. And so when we look, the book looks at Nigeria primarily, but also has an African take on it, if you could understand what that means. So again, please, let's give a warm round of applause to welcome Mr. Aganga. And I told him that it's important for us to understand why this book is relevant, why he wrote this book. And there's a place in the book in chapter 7 which says our biggest and most important asset. And I would like to invite him to read that section, of the book. Yeah. Do you want to use it? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Joseph. You've gone from chapter 0 to 7 directly. That's a big read. But that chapter 7 is capturing our biggest and most important asset as a country, so our people. There are 4 things no one can take away from Nigerians: our kindness towards one another, our sense of humor, even when faced with severe adversity, our entrepreneurial and can-do spirit, our confidence and ability to excel anywhere in the world. These are things you can never take away from Nigerians. This is who we are. We are curious, dynamic, solid and creative. Whether in the vibrant and colorful textile markets of Kano City, or the sprawling waterfront shops of Onitsha, whether inside the bustling scenes of urban Lagos, or across cosmopolitan cities in the world, the Nigerian spirit stands out, and we tend to win against all odds. Giving wings, Nigerians fly in every profession. When 3 colleagues and I accompanied President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan to meet with President Barack Obama at the White House in 2010, he was very complimentary of Nigerians in the United States. In particular, he told us that there were more than 20,000 Nigerian doctors and consultants in the US. Today, that figure is at least 30,000, including highly accomplished, world-renowned, and credible medical professionals. Nigerian medical professionals supporting the UK's National Health Service, NHS, numbered about 10,494 as of 31 December 2021. If second-generation Nigerians and Nigerians having dual citizenship are included in this number in the United Kingdom, the figures are likely to come up to 20,000. Nigeria ranks 6 out of 212 nationalities represented in the NHS. At the last count, more than 5,000 Nigerian medical professionals were working in various South African hospitals. Nigerian doctors, lawyers, accountants, investment bankers, nurses, asset managers, and other professionals are also very successful in Europe. Indeed, reputable universities have successful, bright, and acclaimed Nigerian scholars. United States Space Program and laboratories at Stanford and Oxford have Nigerians working in them. We are, for example, the ones most likely to have birth twins of any nation in the world. Our fecundity is not just physical. The Nigerian imagination brought the first Nobel Prize in literature to the African continent. 10 Nigerians have won Grammy Awards in different categories for music. Nigerian artists sell out the largest music arenas in Europe and America in minutes. Without intensive training, public investments, or extensive inputs, the ingenuity of young Nigerians in fintech particularly has caught the attention of venture capital funds around the world, with 60% of funding for new investments in Nigeria going to fintech alone in 2021. So, why has this nation remained underdeveloped? And how do we break the chains holding it back?
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Those are the questions and the context in which I would like the audience to follow along in the conversation. The context that's been laid and those core questions at the end, to be sure that we actually start the process of answering that question before we leave here. So the first question I would like to ask, sir, is to give us a bit more of an idea of where this book came from. What was the process like, and why is it organized the way that it is? We had a brief discussion about the way it was organized, but tell us a bit more from your perspective.
I think it was like you saw my answer, because this quote you asked me to, this section, actually is why I think there's a common understanding that Nigeria is not where it should be. Because of all the potentials we have. I've just read some of them. But the country that has, it's a top 10 oil and gas producer in the world, has about 45 solid minerals in commercial quantity, 85 million hectares of land where almost everything can be grown. It has a demography that's the envy of the rest of the world. So the question is, why is Nigeria what it is today? Why haven't we achieved a real potential? When you speak to people, you get different answers. Some would just say, oh, it's leadership. Another would say it's corruption. But having been in and out of government, I know it's more than that. So there's not one book that has a comprehensive roadmap on this is where we are, these are the things we need to fix to get us to that promised land, which we will all enjoy if we get there. Secondly, when you get people talking about Nigeria, you could start all the beginning to the end of the day. We all know about the problems about Nigeria. It's all about problems, problems, problems. Very few talk about the causes of the problem, and very, very few think and talk about solutions. This book tries to do that, tries to address, talks about the causes of those problems and profiles solutions. So it has about 145 recommendations in it. So the whole idea is to provide a roadmap, and I know that if Nigeria does well, Africa will do well. And my overall is about Africa. beginning from seeing Africa from the eyes of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. So let's dive right in. The book is divided into chapters, and each chapter kind of can stand on its own as a manual or as a reference topic. But it interestingly begins with the first chapter, which addresses leadership, political and governance structures, and issues around leadership. In talking about leadership, you harp on the state of democracy in Nigeria. And a few days ago, a gentleman who I think you know very well, the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, who happened to be the one who you served under, was giving a keynote address the title of his keynote address was Rethinking Western Liberal Democracy for Africa. And he was quoted as saying that African countries have no business operating a system of government which they didn't have any hands in its definition and design. He goes on to say that we continue with this even when we know that it is not working for us. Do you agree with this sentiment? That first of all, we have no business operating this thing, that we were not part of its design, we were not part of its creation, and we are very well aware that it's not working for us, and we need to maybe essentially stop it. Do you agree with this sentiment?
I think it's an easy question. By the way, President Obasanjo, I served under President Jonathan, but President Obasanjo nominated me into government and convinced me to go into government. And he was the keynote speaker when this book was launched. So he's read the book, so he knows everything in the book. Yeah. So, of course, I agree with him, because that's the point I'm making, one of the points I was making in the book, that democracy as it is practiced now has not, and is not working for Nigeria. And there are a number of reasons for that. We need a system that recognizes our strengths and weaknesses. We need a system. Democracy makes certain assumptions. It makes assumptions about the level of literacy of the people. It makes assumptions about the financial independence of the people. That they're independent enough not to be seduced by money. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. But we know, because we have to be honest with ourselves, we want to address the issues. We know that what I called in the book the Bermuda Triangle, we know that our elections are determined by three things. Are determined by money, religion, and tribe. Most of the people who vote do not understand the implications of their votes. That's why they sell their votes. They do not, some of them do not even understand the role of the president or governor, or the need or necessity to hold them accountable. Therefore, we do not usually vote in the most competent people who have values and have vision to drive the country forward. It's that Bermuda Triangle that's causing that problem. So because of that, there's high level of poverty. It's not working the way it should work. So it's not a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's a government of the political class, by the political class, for the political class. There's no system for you to hold them accountable. In other democracies, key decisions in national assemblies will not take place without them going back to their constituencies, asking, consulting with them, telling them how to vote. If they don't vote, they won't be elected the next time. In this case, nobody consults you. There are so many issues we have raised, but because of the conflict of interest, you have said the cost of governance is high. Who's dealing with it? Nobody. You've talked about the salaries of the National Assembly. Who's dealing with it? Who is going to change it? Nobody. Is that system working? It's not working. You see, in life, when someone says, when you try and try and try again, it's not true. That saying that if you try and you don't succeed, try and try and try again. It's a lie. If President Buhari did not succeed in the first time and he continued to stay with CPC for 10 elections, he will not be president. But the real saying should be, if you try and don't succeed, change and then try again. So if we know it's not working, let us change it and move forward. So yes, I do. It's a simple answer.
I guess the follow-up question would be how? How do we do that? How do we do that where, like you've described, the present system is one of the political class, by the political class, for the political class? There's no incentive for that system to be changed because it's serving those that it's set to serve. So what then would be, I think we recognize that there is a need for change. How do we go about that? Particularly those of us that are outside the political class.
That are outside?
Outside of the political class.
Right. This book, we are all supposed to be in it together. Meaning there's a role for all of us. I'm not the only one that has the complete whatever. The first thing is to accept that there's a problem. When you accept and understand you have a problem, you're on the path to resolving it. Most people don't even think about it, that it's not working. It's not working and we need to do something about it. So this book has highlighted the fact there's a problem. Second, and has given examples of how it has been done in different countries and how other countries have adapted it. And has in Switzerland, it's one of the best governed nations in the world. The country has a Swiss Federal Council that has 7 people. Presidency is rotated every year between those 7 people. There are laws there that say that if the National Assembly passes a law, whatever is a bill, before they pass it, if you have signatures, maybe 100,000 or 200,000, you can change it. There's power to the people as well. So those are some of the things that examples that we can give. But we have to start educating ourselves and others. We have to start doing that not only in English, but in our local languages. Because the people that go to vote are not like you and I, most of them. We need to educate, and we need to talk to our national, and we need to use our vote to send a message across that this is not working, we need a change. But that's just the beginning of the whole process. It's a process that we all have to work on to get us to where we need to be.
Agreed. And I think you also go ahead to mention that if we take a look at the ranking of Nigeria since 1960, when we gained our independence, and the ranking of the state of democracy in Nigeria, we've never really, by those standards, attained what would be classified as a full democracy. And so all of those things that we have practiced, which you mentioned in the book, all of those things that our democracy has been, have not necessarily worked for us. Would it then be fair to say that it is Western liberal democracy that has failed us, or to say that these forms of whatever it is that we practice, I think currently we're in what is described as a hybrid, that this hybrid form is not working. The authoritarian form has not worked. All of these many different forms haven't worked. But have we actually practiced democracy as it should be, enough to say that it has not worked for us?
Okay. Let's differentiate. The point is not that democracy does not work. The point is that the democracy as it is and it is practiced here does not work. There's a difference. Now, democracy, the Economic Intelligence Group, they go around and assess the different democracies and they rank you. So it's like saying 4 is the highest level, 1 is the lowest level. So they look at regimes. The first one, the lowest one, is called the authoritative or authoritarian regime. The next, And that's usually when you have military dictatorship and all that. The next level to that is called the hybrid democracy, where you're trying to pretend to do a bit of democracy, a bit of authoritarian. The next level is what you call flawed democracy. And then the next level is, yes, when you have full democracy. So we say we're running democracy, but we're not. In fact, it's described as a hybrid regime, not even democracy. So how many people know that? The idea is to say, wait, it's not working. And we continue to do the same thing, and we have remained a hybrid democracy since 1999. Now, let me give you an example of what a hybrid democracy looks like. It says, the attributes of democracy, in a hybrid democracy, the attributes of democracy, such as having regular elections, a multi-party system, a legal opposition, are all present. Yes, that's democracy, we have that. They're all present in hybrid democracies or regimes. But they also have a low degree of representation. The representation of the interests of citizens in the process of political decision making. They have a low level of political participation by the people. The last Anambra election, only 10% of the registered voters voted, particularly in voting at elections, and a very low level of trust in political institutions and election results. They are nations with regular electoral frauds, preventing them from being fair and free democracies. These nations commonly have governments that apply pressure on political opposition, they have non-independent judiciaries, widespread corruption, harassment of and pressure placed on the media, anemic rule of law, underdeveloped political culture, and issues in functioning of government. That describes where we are. And we have been like that for 23 years. So we need to look at this and address, and the one reasons I recommended, I suggested proportional representation, which is not one winner takes the whole thing. Recognize the interests of whatever. So there are recommendations there, things we can think about and do. And that's one reason I say, we are not even practicing democracy. You hear people say we're progressive, we're Democrats. They are not Democrats. They are just deceiving you. Look, it's about their interests. Whatever works and keeps them there is fine. You've gone through an election, it's painful for them. They have to travel over a lot of money. But once they get there, it's bye-bye, see you again 4 years' time. So what?
Thank you very much, sir. You move on from there to delve into the status of some key institutions that you have identified in the book as being essential to the success of a nation, or to achieving the goals the book is set out. And these three institutions are the political institutions, economic institutions, and social institutions. I'd like you to take an X-ray, given your experience, given the ideas in the book, and tell us your thought on these three institutions given the status of Nigeria today, as at today.
Right. There has been a detailed research conducted, and there have been many researches on that nations fail because institutions are weak or that they do not exist. Any nation that has weak institutions or where the institutions do not exist cannot succeed. They fail. And there are three major institutions, if you want to classify them. You have political institutions, you have the economic institutions, and you have the social institutions. Now, I went on to talk a bit more about the social institutions because people don't think about that. So under the social institutions, you have educational system, the health system,
and you have the family system. When you look at it, the family system today is very different from what it used to be. That is the anchor of your values. That is where your value. I always say I am what I am today because of the family, my upbringing, and the secondary school I went to. Every other thing just added to it. But I am what I am because of that. Now, why are institutions, obvious things why our institutions are weak. The idea is not that we don't have institutions. They are weak because we erroneously think that the dividends of democracy is to share jobs to party faithfuls. As opposed to the dividends of democracy should be good governance. Look at all the, how can you expect, just think about it. These people, they run the institutions. So whether all economic institutions, whether it's CBN, whether it's BOI, all those are institutions, whether the Ministry of Industry and Investment, whether the Ministry of Finance, they're all institutions of government. They're arms, one for policy, one for implementation. They're all there. But when you appoint the wrong person there just because he's a party faithful and he thinks that his job is to go there and make money, how can they work for you? And they are not accountable to you. So it can never work. So in answer to your questions, I gave a talk last week on corporate governance, and I said, look, private sector is improving, it's stronger, but they will not succeed until we address the issue of corporate governance in the public sector. And I gave some what needs to be done, some examples. So are institutions strong today? They're not strong. That's why your economy is weak. That is why the school, look at the quality of your school. I don't know, when I went to school, it's different from the sort of school you're going to now. My first university was University of Ibadan. We had the best, even Olympic-sized good swimming pool, dining area, whatever it is. I had people who came to my room to pack my clothes and wash them for me. Yes, and the university. I had porters who came to the room and put to your beddings, took them away, wash them, and replace them every Friday. Come and do your bed, set up your bed. I had a room to myself in my final year. And when I graduated, I had 8 or 10 job offers. So it has, compared to it, so the education, today we have so many institutions, but most of them, our education is not relevant to our economy. And the knowledge, what they know, we place emphasis on quantity rather than quality in terms of education. So it's gone down. So how can that produce people that will run the political system or the economic? Because it is the schools that produce people for political system and the economic system. When they don't have the right skills, knowledge, values, they will fail there. So they all have it. It's in our interest to make sure that we address those things right from secondary school. You talk about political system. The political parties today, they are very weak. They have no ideology. There's no, you have opaque funding. You have, I don't know, there are platforms to contest election. That is why one can move from A to B. If he doesn't get the ticket here, it goes, it's not a matter of ideology or belief or anything. Would you consider it to be a strong institution? These are things that we need to address. And if we address them, we will have a great country. We deserve it. And that's what this book tries to do.
Before I echo a question that I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds, you touch on another key sector, the civil service. And yeah, So someone said to me the other day that, do you realize that if Nigerians woke up one morning and all of the civil service disappeared, maybe like Rapture or something, and all of them disappeared, that most Nigerians wouldn't notice? Except, of course, for those whose family members, maybe your parents or the breadwinner is one of those people. But in terms of their effectiveness or how much they mean to your lives and the quality of your life, and most Nigerians wouldn't notice. You talk extensively about how even with the foreign service, how the quality of the civil service has been on a decline. Walk us through because you also make some recommendations in the book about this. Can you walk us through that briefly? Then I'll come to where I'm sure I'm reading minds and hearing small comments about the question on people's minds.
Again, the ministries are institutions. The point I was making in that chapter is that the civil service is the backbone of any government. And when it's weak, the government falls. So going back to what you said, that if they disappear, nobody will notice, that is why government is weak. You see, the civil service is supposed to provide continuity. It's supposed to be, you have, and it's not, what makes it far more interesting is that everything I'm saying, we've had a very strong civil service before as a country, where our civil servants went to even help other countries in Africa and in other places. In the days of people like Simeon Adebo and all the other people, we've had some very good, in fact, when I got I was Minister of Finance, and then Industry, Trade and Investment, I went to at least 68 different countries to market the country. And everywhere I went, I interacted with the embassy and the ambassadors. And I couldn't be more proud, if you like, of the civil servants in the foreign affairs. Very dedicated, very patriotic, very knowledgeable, I enjoyed working with them. They were really, and when I told the minister that, wow, I enjoy working with your staff, your people, he said, it is a dying breed. And I said, what do you mean? He said, in those days, they go to the university and recruit the best brains into foreign affairs. Then they get in foreign affairs, they train them, they invest in them, train them for 2-3 years. Within those 2-3 years, you must learn another foreign language. Then you understudy before they then send you out. But now they don't do the same. It's not the same anymore. Again, it's as part of how we have weakened the institutions. I talked extensively about my ministry when I got to MITI, that sometimes, averagely, maybe they had electricity 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. Okay, I won't talk about it. There's no need to talk about it. because that's not the point. But let me go straight into, let me talk about, more about, so what's my recommendation? I will talk more about my recommendation. My recommendation is that we need to make our civil service leaner and smarter. Today, it's more like a social service system, where you just employ people, pay them, where they may come to work, not come to work, it doesn't matter. But they work in the ministry. They take exams and they pass. And then they move to the next grade and all that. So we need to make our civil service leaner and smarter. Make them professional, apolitical. We then need to pay them far much more to attract the best and to retain the best. You cannot be paying them peanuts and don't expect them to steal. It's just not, it doesn't work that way. Or you cannot be paying them peanuts and expect to attract the best brains. So you need to pay them enough to attract the best and retain the best. We need to make sure that you bring in merit into it. Merit in terms of recruitment, meritocracy in terms of recruitment and in terms of promotion. We need to bring in things like value system, which needs to be strong in those ministries. We need to give them the equipment, train them regularly, but also give them the equipment to work. You'll be amazed when you go to some ministries, you don't even have the equipment to work. We need to do that. We need also to invest well in their financial security, meaning that a retiree from the ministry should know that when they retire, they will get their pension and gratuity on time. When you're still in ministry and a retired pastor comes to see you, is begging you for money to feed his family and all that, what would you do? You will steal if you have the opportunity. Yeah, but it's not and in some cases, government has already deducted even money from your salary towards your pension. And yet when the time comes, you are not paid. Or it's not remitted to the PFA. Then you have situations where in some states, not all of them, where a governor that has worked there only for 8 years is entitled to salary for life that is indexed to, I say inflation because it's based on whatever the new governor is earning, entitled to 2 or 3 cars every 3 years, health insurance, he has got health insurance and can travel abroad, staff is paid for, and even some holidays paid for. And above all, it is a first line charge, meaning that you take that out before you pay anything. And yet you have civil servants that have been there for 30, 35 years, some of them not getting their pension salary or not getting it on time. That's not a fair system, is it? So these are the things, and that's why you say it's a government for the political class, by the political class, and of the political class.
Thank you. Thank you. Our time is far spent, but we'll keep an eye on it. We still have a bit of time. Let's leave Nigeria a bit and talk about other African countries. Let's talk about something that I recently read about. It was a press release by the government of Malawi, and I'd like to get your take on this. So I'll read the press release. It says, the Republic of Malawi press release. The general public is hereby informed that the government has embarked on the export of labor to various countries, including Israel. The Labor Export Program is an initiative of the government in collaboration with the private sector to fulfill this administration's commitment to job creation and youth empowerment, as championed by His Excellency Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, I almost pronounced it Chiwenka, the President of the Republic of Malawi. There are several sectors under consideration for the first cohort. And the first cohort is for the agricultural sector. Under the Labor Export Program, the government would like to inform the public that the safety and security of the youth is paramount. On the Israel labor export, the youth will work at certified and approved locations which are classified as fit and safe environment. In addition, medical insurance, repatriation arrangements are in place for the youth involved. All the labor exports are guided by Malawi's government's Labor Export Program and harmonized labor export guidelines. So far, the first cohort of youth from various parts of the country have been granted an opportunity to work in Israel and will leave anytime since all the clearance have been granted. And most youth are expected to be engaged in this program. And then it goes on to talk about how the program will benefit both individuals and the nation. A portion of wages will cover living costs in Israel, while the remainder will be remitted to personal accounts here in Malawi to boost foreign exchange. And it's signed by the Secretary for Labor. Did you hear that? Someone shouted, "This is slavery." Yeah. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think the are trying to be innovative in solving a problem. I can see the mission, what they're trying to achieve, but I have a problem with how they're trying to achieve it. The how is a problem, how much more. They're trying to source money to beef up their foreign reserves, in a way. Mainly that, and they say, well, we're trying to create jobs for our youth. But the how is a problem from an ethical point of view, and can easily be misconstrued as another form of slavery. So I don't think I disagree with the how. Now, if you now say, okay, the same objective, every country has the same goal and objective. So if you look at the way Nigeria has dealt with it, in a way, yes, a lot of Nigerians have jackpot. Yes, we've gone abroad. You know, they don't need government help to jackpot. They've gone, and they're working, and they're remitting. I think the last time, I forget how much, maybe 20-something, the amount that is remitted every year from the diaspora comes in. The way we have tried to tap into that money is, first of all, by issuing diaspora bond, so that they could buy and invest, if they choose to. They invest in the diaspora bond, the money comes here, it's still foreign exchange, and it builds up your reserve. And they have invested, they make money from it. But it's their choice, the way we do it. Another way we could also do that is by creating an equity fund, which I wrote in this book. That's what we can do, and get them to invest on some strategic investments. Ethiopia, for example, developed their big energy project using diaspora money. India have done the same thing. So there are ways you can get money into this regard. And the last one is what the CBN was trying to do, to incentivize them to bring money in a structured way, because the way most of the money is coming in today is going towards consumption, helping to pay for health, school fees, food, and all that, and it's just not structured in a way that it helps beef our foreign reserves, which is why the CBN came with one or two schemes. So there are many ways you can achieve the same goal. I disagree with this approach of, I understand their problem, I understand what they're trying to achieve, but I disagree with how.
Okay, don't you think that this also points to a problem that, you know, we have in Nigeria? One is our population, and describing our population as a problem, I think, may be presumptive, but our population is an issue. And the demographic, the youth of that population, the size of that demographic, that is not necessarily in the workforce, or maybe even some may argue employable. I don't know, I'm not an expert on these by any means. So Malawi looks and says, we've got quite a number of people at home, they're not doing anything. How many of you want to go to Israel and work on a farm? And they all raise their hand and say, Uncle, I. And they say, all right, let's go. So what's the problem? What is Nigeria's, or what would be a Nigerian alternative as proposed by you, sir? Not to address those who have the experience and the expertise to leave on their own, but those that are here and all they have is maybe their physical capacity. What do we do with that group of people?
Well, population can be a strength and should be a strength if it is well harnessed. In fact, one of our pride, you rather have a youthful demography than an aging one, like China, like Japan, and these other countries. In Europe, where the average is about 40 years old, you rather have a younger generation. So it can be a strength if it is well harnessed. Our problem is that it can be a strength in the sense that they can join and become part of, as you say, that productive workforce, which will increase their productivity as a nation, increase your GDP and all that in terms of production. The problem we have had is that we have not, and comes from weak institutions, we have not armed them with the right education and skill to be able to become financially independent. That's the problem. You have graduates who cannot speak English. And yet they went to universities. So that's the problem. When we're doing these things, we don't look at implications later. It's because we have not armed them with the right education and the skills to turn them to a good, strong, productive workforce that will become a strong and big consumer group that will be buying those goods that are being. So we need to go. I give examples in the book of how retooling, how Brazil did it. Lula took at least about 20 million people out through their program. China has a lot of people. They are doing their approach is different. They took about 800 million people out of poverty at the time. So the idea, the things, and China now, yes, is doing it in a different way by lending money to African countries. Part of that money you use to buy for infrastructure development. So you benefit from the infrastructure. But part of that loan goes to paying Chinese companies that are providing you with the equipment. And then they export part of their people as technical partners who come here and they work here. Well, I remember when I was in government, I went to visit a company, and I visited two companies same day. One, I saw a lot of Nigerians working there. The other, I saw a lot of Chinese working there. And I said, why do you have so many Chinese there? They love Nigerians that are not working. He said, Honorable Minister, I borrowed the money to do this thing. With the Chinese, they work from, these people that are here, they work all day. You just need to give them that lunch break to have their lunch, 1 hour to rest. After that, they are back at work. There's no my father died, my mother died, or I have to go home, whatever it is. I'm sick, I don't come there. He said productivity is much, and efficiency far much more than if he had, and he has to think about paying back his own loan, whatever it is. But the point is that we have not equipped our people well enough in terms of knowledge, education, skill, and also attitude. Attitude is important. You see, what makes a nation rich or poor is not really it's not the natural resources and those things. It's the ability, is to have people who have the ability, their attitude, the values to convert resources into prosperity. So having all these things in the ground it's having people to take it out doesn't make you rich. It's how you use it. And it takes knowledge, it takes skills, and it takes attitude to get it done. Those are the things we need to focus on. Again, a lot of people in government already have this book, so they're reading. I just want my country to be great. That's all. I want my country to be prosperous because I think we can do that. If I was able to do it, I'd distribute it free. But a lot of people have been supportive. There's someone that bought about 400 copies and said, just distribute it to higher institutions. I want people to read it and see the role they can play and play that role, because together we can make a difference. It's not one or two people. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. I have about 34 more questions. But I'm being given signs everywhere I look that we need to move to the question and answer. So for this section, because I also know there are about 124 questions on this angle, we'll take all the questions at one time. I'll write them down, and then he'd answer. That way we don't have people ask. And please keep your question to just one question, 5 seconds. Go straight to the point. No multi-layered question. And we'll start at the back all the way. There's a lady, and then walk our way forward. So 5 seconds. Your time starts as soon as, except you are from Team Ghana from yesterday, you get 10 seconds. Yes.
Thank you, Joseph. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Aganga, I listened to the interview. I haven't read your book, but I glanced through it. And I've observed that a lot of who worked in government come out of government, write books, and then come and tell us what should be done. Personally, I think that we talk a lot in this country, and as far as governance is concerned, we're not doing enough. And I think that citizens have a right to hold people elected or appointed accountable, because you're in that office, even if you're in that office for one day. I'm sorry, but you didn't answer. I wanted to hear you respond to a lot of questions that were asked and those that weren't asked, because we've heard all of these things, but the how hasn't been responded to. And we're not all going to join political parties. We do not all have to be in politics or be appointed as ministers or whatever. We have our different roles. Some will play their roles in art, some will play their roles in whatever sector it is they choose. But we're trusting that the people who would be ministers, who would be commissioners, who would be special advisors, understand their role and play their role. So please, can you pick anything that has been discussed today and really tell us how, if you were placed as minister again tomorrow, what would you do differently and how would you actually address sustainably a lot of these problems?
Let's take a question from this side, from the back. Okay, another one there. Sorry, please,
I think like
1 minute,
yeah,
1
like
minute.
a quicker way to ask that is like, how would you radically reimagine how you incentivize the political elite or the wider elite to do better? Because one thing that you haven't mentioned ultimately here is that the biggest problem is a lack of capacity and will. Like all of these things we're discussing is that these people do not have the mental capacity to even do it. So how do you begin to incentivize the current crop? So not like imaginary, wishful, like this current crop, how do you begin to incentivize, knowing what you've known from what you've done so far?
Thank you. Work your way forward. There's no hands on this side, so just work your way forward.
Good afternoon, sir. As a former Minister of Finance, did you, in your time, imagine that the local currency, the Naira, is going to be in this bad situation that we are today? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was such a delightful panel. My experience working at the AFCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in Ghana, is that Nigeria is very standoffish or perhaps agnostic about the project of African trade. And yet, intra-European trade is at 59%, intra-Asian trade 69%, intra-African trade just 18%. So my question to you is, sir, what will it take for the Nigerian economic elites to understand that all the money they make in Nigeria alone, if they invest and believe in Africa, they can actually treble it? What will it take for Nigeria to believe in the African continental project? Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. In everything you've said, I was hoping that you would talk about, first of all, the effect of military rule on the psyche of the Nigerian, and then this loss of values that we had, and then the failure of your generation to continue with, no, this is serious. The failure of your generation that enjoyed, a sane country and was raised with values and so on and so forth. How do we bring back that value now? My generation is gone, we're lost. What do we do with our own children? Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay, one last question.
Hi, afternoon. Oh, sorry, good afternoon, sir. Sorry, this seems like a less serious question compared to all the serious questions being asked. But you spoke about overpopulation in Nigeria, and I think we can all agree that government resources are not enough, or they are being misappropriated, so they are effectively not enough to cover the population, the ever-growing population in Nigeria. So do you think for a country like this, a one-child policy would help, or how can we solve it?
Okay, thank you very much. So let me recap the questions. Okay, all right, so we'll take them one by one, and a quick response. The first question said, the first question was one around, we've heard a lot more rhetoric and not as much in terms of practical solutions for what do we do to get out of the situation that we are in, practically.
Right, I think it would be unwise to expect that in this 1 hour you get everything out, but I think we'll try to get as much as possible. And I take it the first person who has a question started by saying she has not read the book. So I think she should read the book. If she reads the book, her question will be answered.
Excellent.
And this is a very different book. It's not like I didn't set up to write it. You know, people write a book about, I did this one did it to me, this one did it, this one. This is not about that. This is about just a country. That's what can we do differently. And I don't think there are many books that address that. But if you read through this, and I gave account of my time in finance, I gave my account of my time in industry, trade, and investment, that go and read through this. It's not a matter of if I was appointed again, what would I do? It's all there, what I would do.
The second question was, the second question was, how do we incentivize the elite, since they're the ones that hold power now, to do better?
Maybe not. One is, things have changed a lot, and they are changing rapidly. In my time, which is just only 8 or 9 years ago, WhatsApp was not there, was not as effective, wasn't as, but today, almost everything you hear within minutes. You know, information is there, and people are being held even more accountable now, indirectly. People are more educated about what's going on in the system and all that, and I think that helps a lot. You'll be amazed how many of the ministers have a copy of this, and I read it. In fact, someone bought for the ministers also. So, and so how many of them actually have read it and all that? So they're doing that, but I think what for the longer thing, in terms of what we need to do, we need to make politics less than, we need to make it in a way that it is not, people don't see it as a business. That's the thing. We don't see it as a business. So for example, if your National Assembly members was part-time, and they were just paying allowances just to come when they come and all that, and you are not buying cars for them when they come through and all that, no, they won't come there. Yeah, so those are because at the moment you treat it as business, and it's like, yes, we have to fight for this ticket to get there, then we'll go and do this. When you start doing something, make it less attractive, so that it's only people who really want to serve going to there will start getting changes. I think that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much. The next question was, would you ever have imagined that the Naira will be where it is today?
I don't think anyone would have imagined. I don't think anyone would have imagined. I was telling someone that, and I don't think so. If there's no, I wouldn't have thought so. And me will go to 68 countries, and I'm telling people to come, bring your money and come and invest in Nigeria. I did that with so much conviction that the opportunity, because then Nigeria provided you, it was number 4 in terms of return on investment. The opportunities were there. Inflation was about 8% or thereabouts, single digits, not about 27% today. Food inflation is about 30% or plus today. The economy was growing at about 7-8%. Population growth was about 3%. Now we're growing less than the population growth. No, nobody. So I went with so much conviction that in 5 years Nigeria will not be what it was then. It will be a great what it is, because the macroeconomic environment was so strong, and that's what you need to get right. That is exchange rate, interest rate, inflation. Those things have to be right. Otherwise, you just lose your money and all that. So I never envisaged that. That's a simple question, answer to your question. In fact, I was given an example of someone I encouraged in 2015 to buy a property, which he came to invest in property in Nigeria, brought in $4 million. At the time, exchange rate was around 150. And he spent about 700 and something million naira. Now he needed to take money back in 2021, or thereabout, 2021, 2022. The same property sold for a little bit less than 700 million. But then when he converted, he brought the money from England. When he converted it, he got less than $1 million back. So everyone that has this, at least 1/5 of your, it's gone. 1/5 of your money is gone. So nobody, nobody. The answer is no.
How do we get the elite, again, emphasis on the elite, people in power, to believe in and participate and support the African project?
Well, he's talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area. The first thing before the African Free Trade Continental Area was IPA. You know about IPA? Yes. Okay. I wrote against it. And based on the support of the private sector. With African Continental Free Trade Zone, I think gradually it's all about education. And as you rightly said, to emphasize more about the opportunities. I spoke about that to the Manufacturers Association at the AGM about 3 weeks ago. That was setting an agenda for Nigeria on the African Continental Free Trade Zone. That was the topic of my lecture about 3 weeks ago. And I think they chose the topic, which means that they're beginning to get interested. I think it's beginning to come true, but it's a case of selling the opportunities and all that. And we have to get the rules right. So the rules about the rules of origin has to be very, very clear. Otherwise, because the way it is now, the way the problem, what people say as problem is that you have Europeans or American or Chinese coming over to go to Ghana, or you're from Ghana. Okay, Zimbabwe. Okay, come and produce there and then export it to other African countries. There has to be, the rules of origin has to be very clear and monitored properly. And then, of course, we need to make sure that we produce in the most effective and efficient manner so that in terms of price, we can be competitive. There are a number of things we need to do as a country to be competitive in order to achieve what they're trying to do. So education, and then trying to be more competitive, creating a more competitive environment for the Nigerian manufacturers.
The last, or second to last question was, what's your generation doing to fix the fact that the things you enjoyed, you didn't give to us? You were in university, you had one room, people washing your clothes. Now when we're
I should have said that, baby.
Now when we're in university, there's 100 of us in the room, and then we wash people's clothes outside to make money to pay for school. And you people that enjoyed that and left this for us, what are you doing to
I'm not sure that was your question, though.
My question was about
Values.
and then Nigeria is now a fractured nation. So without unity, all these reforms you're talking about.
Yeah. So that's but I can understand why Joseph will go in that direction.
And values and fractured.
I can understand why we're going in that direction and all that. But I think there's some recommendations here. But I think we just need to, and we've been I don't know whether you're aware that in 2005, I founded what you call the Nigerian Leadership Initiative. The Nigerian Leadership Initiative brings together accomplished and credible Nigerians together to think about and talk about how they can play a transformative role in Nigeria. So in a class of 20, I get maybe 10 or 15 from the diaspora and 10 from Nigeria. So in my first class, about 400 people have gone through the program since 2005. And the idea is to build not just leadership, there are different types of leadership, but what I am for and promoting is values-based leadership. Because when you do that, you're likely to get things right. So that's just part of what we're doing and all that. I think we need to go back to primary school and start doing all that. It has to start right from that level. And we as parents, we're all leaders. Each one of you is a leader. You too have a duty and responsibility. It starts from the home. I was talking about, although we didn't get there, I talked briefly about my family, why I said my upbringing was the most important thing. I talked about my mother and said, look, my mother, I'm the last of 7 children. And said, look, we're doing everything to educate all of you well enough because we want you to be able to speak and be heard anywhere in the world. She taught us to understand that she wants us to be financially independent so that when we give to each other, we give out of love. She taught us to understand that the biggest wealth you can ever have is contentment. When you are content, that's the biggest wealth you can ever have in the world. My mother, for each one of us, on her birthday, received special present. The special present was not a bike, was not a whatever it is, it was a 15-page letter. Each one of us will receive it on our birthday. It will contain what you did well in the last year and what you could do differently in the next year. And when you see her next, when you're in secondary school, you get the letter in secondary school. And you know that the first thing she's going to discuss is, did you get my letter? What do you think? And she'll sit down with you. And every letter ended up with, do not remember that all that glitters is no gold, and remember the home you have come from. Every letter ended with that. So and that's why it has so much profound impact on me. So we have a duty ourselves. Now, I'm not sure I've written any letter to any of my children, but we do it in a different way, whatever it is. But we all have a responsibility. We are mothers, especially women. You say empower a woman, empower the country, empower the world. So I think we all have a duty to do that, and I think that's what we can do. You talk about unity, and I think one of the things, I think you're right, we need to bring ourselves together and talk about unity and all that, but Joseph was talking to me, one thing I wrote about in the book, that my parents taught us that anywhere you are and you're happy is home. So, if you read through the book, you see a lot of those things here and all that, and why I have nieces who are from Botswana. Same name, same nieces, false nieces, not distant, not cousins. They're from Botswana. So you just read through this. There's a lot to it that you can get through. Yeah.
And the last question is, even though we are the twins capital of the world, we're giving birth double. Do you think that a one-child policy would work?
Oh yes, that was a good question. You asked a question. I think it's going to be difficult given our culture. Everything we do, we have to think about culture, and all that. We have to, but it's a good point. But I think it's better to. The other things you can do, which I mentioned here. Yes.
Or a two-child policy. Yeah. All right. So in wrapping up, the conversation may have seemed like we were talking about ills and woes and things are bad and this is where we're leaving it. But that's not what the book is about. And to help us get a sense of how the book ends, I'll invite Mr. Aganga to tell us where he sees the story ending. And this is also why I think if you haven't read the book, you may be missing out on some of the nuances of the conversation we've had. Quickly get a copy, and he'll read this and we'll bring the conversation to a close, right on time.
Thank you very much, Joseph. From the outside, before I left Goldman Sachs in London to serve in government, I felt like everyone else that Nigeria and Africa had great potential. When I got in and served first as Minister of Finance and later as Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, I saw, this time not felt, I saw that Nigeria did in fact have all it takes to be a great nation, and that there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel. 6 years after leaving government, I have moved from feeling and seeing to knowing that the future of Nigeria is indeed very bright, despite the current challenges. And I do not take these challenges lightly. The younger generation gives me hope and inspiration that when, not if, the matters in the book are fully addressed, there will be no stopping Nigeria and Africa. Patrice Lumumba must have seen this when he said, "The day Nigeria wakes up, Africa will never be the same again." The future is brighter than many people think or know. I end with Nelson Mandela's Madiba's quote, "The black people of the world need Nigeria to be great as a source of pride and as a source of confidence." I agree with Madiba. God bless Africa. God bless Nigeria. Nigeria will rise again.
Thank you very much. Please a louder round of applause for Mr. Olusegun Aganga. Thank you all very much.